Hello, or welcome back if you've already seen part 1. This is part 2 of the videos on writing an expert advisor that uses the Beast Super Signal indicator. The Beast Super Signal indicator brings up buy and sell signals on the chart, and this expert will read those signals and trade when it finds them. In this video, all I'm doing is updating the code that was written in part 1. So in part 1, I wrote code for the Beast Super Signal indicator version 1.0. Version 1.0 is an old version, and it's acknowledged that it has some problems, and that's why Beast Trading Software have updated it to later versions and removed the bugs and the issues with that. The latest version, as of the time of making this video, is version 4.3, which is available on the Metatrader market. So as I said, I wrote the code in part 1 for the Beast Super Signal version 1.0. Not because I intend you to use that version 1.0, but the coding itself and the way I go about it is an example of how to deal with this type of indicator. Because there are differences in the way the 4.3 indicator works, and because you should not be using version 1.0, this video, part 2, will update the code that was written in part 1. If you haven't seen part 1, then all I'm doing here is updating the code, and there'll be a lot of code you won't see. So I recommend that you see that first if you haven't already. And then we can move on to part 2, where I'm simply updating the code to use Beast Super Signal version 4.3. And then I'm going on to update that code to work with Metatrader 5, because Beast Super Signal 4.3 is available for both Metatrader 4 and Metatrader 5. Version 4.3 is available from the MQL market. Let me clean up a little bit here. If you go to market, you can search for Beast Super Signal, and here it is, and you can actually download a demo version of this. I'm not going to be testing a real version because I don't want to pay for this. I'm just going to be testing a demo version. And I've already downloaded it here in my indicators under market. I have Beast Super Signal. Let me open a new chart. As a demo version of the Beast Super Signal, even though I'm on a demo account, I can't simply load this onto a chart. I get this, it's a demo version, can only be run in the strategy tester. Okay, that's just a bit of a nuisance. So I will run it in the strategy tester then, just to see what's going on. Let me go back to view, strategy tester, settings, change this back to indicator. I'll go into market, Beast Super Signal EX4. Now, I can see from here in indicator properties, I can see what the inputs are to this version, and they are different to the version 1.0. If you go to the MQL5 market, I was unable to find any description of what these values actually do. Some of them are kind of obvious, so the risk reward ratio and use ADR filter false, but I don't know what the ADR filter does when you turn it on. I can understand the ADR period and percent limit. I know there's an MA trend period and so on, but I don't know what adjusting these values might do to the results from the indicator. That's not described anywhere, which makes it kind of pointless to give these values in the first place. I can really just play around with trial and error. Anyway, important thing here, these values are different, so I'm going to be changing the inputs that I take. I'm, again, not going to take everything. I'll just take these first 4, and I'll explain when I get to it why I'm taking this risk reward ratio in. And the rest I'll just be running as the defaults. Now I'm just going to run this from the 14th of November to the 17th. Should be 17th of November. From the 14th of November through to, let's say, the 19th. I just want to see a couple of signals appear. Now let me pause initially. So what appears to be happening here, when it's first loading the indicator, I've got these entry, stop loss, and take profit lines. But if I scroll backwards, I can see they begin way back here at a down arrow. So these lines seem to appear from the most recent signal, down or up, and they just extend out until a new arrow occurs. So let me let that run a little further. So I can see I have the first entry signal here. This is an up arrow, so that's a buy. I can see there's a horizontal line called entry and a horizontal line for stop loss. If I just shrink the scale, and there's a take profit line as well. And I can also see that the arrow keeps moving as the candle's growing. And I assume that that's just so that the arrow stays out of the way of the candle. So that's not too important. What is important, just as before, is that the arrow occurred. I can also see, looking at the data window, that there is no value. There's not even a place for a value. So the buy and the sell values seem to have been removed from the data window. And that makes some sense, remembering that the prices that were shown there were really just the positions of the arrows, and they weren't meaningful as a price. So when I write this, I'm just going to take a chance and assume that buffers 0 and 1 are still the up and the down arrow signals. This in the visual tester is just running unbelievably slowly, so I'm not going to wait for it to go any further. I think I've got all the information I need now. There are 3 lines, there's an arrow. I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to now right click on the chart, because I removed all indicators and objects from this chart before I started. So I can see there's an indicator list, and that will just be the Beast Super Signal. And I know that there are values because I can see these arrows. Previously, these arrows were part of an indicator buffer, but they may be objects now. So I'm going to look at the objects list. I can see some labels, and that will be associated with this box that appears on the screen. More labels, and then I can see the trend lines, which are the entry, take profit and stop loss lines, and the labels that are associated with those, but there are no objects for the arrows. Just hit list all to make sure. No, there are no objects for those arrows. So the arrows, I assume, are still part of an indicator buffer using the indicator type arrow, but I do want to pick up the entry, take profit and stop loss values, because they don't seem to be a fixed distance away. They seem to be related to some kind of prior swing high or swing low. So there are some changes I'm going to need to make to the version 1.0 expert, but not too many. Now this is the version 1.0 that I have. I'm just going to do a save as and update this to 4.3. So now I have my Beast Super Signal Expert V14.3.mq4. Going back to the beginning, the inputs have changed. Let's go back here, and if I have a look at these indicator properties again, I've got a look back, a strength, a trend period, and then this risk to reward ratio. And that, see, it's a 1:1 there. It's not just letting me enter a ratio. So I've got an option of 3. So firstly, let me remove these 3 inputs. All right, so that's the first 3, the look back bars, strength period and trend period. And the strength period was a double, so I've entered that as a 15.0, and these are just the same default values, because again, I'm not trying to change any of these values and play around with how the indicator works. I'm just showing how you can capture the inputs that you then pass through to the indicator. But then there is the risk to reward ratio, and that offered an enum with 3 different options. So first I'm going to create the enum. Now the thing about enums, they are actually integers with just displayable and fixed values. Let me go back to here. If I look at these indicator properties, I can select from 3 different enums, and each of these will have an integer value associated with it, but I have no idea what that integer value is. So to get that, I'm just going to set my indicator properties. I'll leave that at 1 to 1 to begin with. Start. As soon as it begins, I stop, go to the journal, and I can see here the inputs that I've used. Look back 1000, box size 15, period 100, profit mode 0. So looking at the position here, that's the 4th, profit mode equals 0. So I know that that 1-to-1 risk reward ratio is 0. Go back to the settings. I'll just change that. It's very likely at this point that I'm going to get 0, 1, and 2, but just to make sure, start again, stop, journal. Here I have profit mode 1. One more time. And now it's profit mode 2. So the values are 0, 1, and 2. So because these are 0, 1, and 2, I don't need to specify any values. Enums will naturally begin at 0. And the enum statement finishes with a semicolon. Now, you might think, why don't I just enter 1, 2, or 3 as the ratio? It's because I need to pass this value to the indicator, and the indicator is expecting a value of 0, 1, or 2. So you can't just make up your own ratios. You have to use the values that it's expecting. You could simply have an input that is 0, 1, or 2, but it's just as easy to create the enum here. I won't add any more inputs. That's enough just to show how this works. I still have a volume. I'm not going to be using take profit pips or stop loss pips because I'm going to be getting those values from the lines added to the screen. I just need to update this path because this is now the V14.3. But while I'm here, I've downloaded this from the market. Here is the Beast Super Signal.ex4 from the market. I want to put that into the indicators folder, so I'm just going to drag that, control drag, and I'm going to change the name here so that I know that I'm dealing with version 4.3. So that name now matches this name. I don't need the global take profit and stop loss. These two statements are the same. I don't need to calculate the global take profit and stop loss. These statements are the same. In the OpenTrade though, my stop loss is not going to be coming from price minus stop loss and take profit, so on. I'm going to be getting those values from the screen, so I'm just going to create a function for that. And I'm going to set some properties. I'll just say bear with me for a moment, I'll fill this in for you. Okay, now I'm going to be writing this function, this getLineValue, but I'm going to pass in two arguments, the type of the line and the type of the object really, and the name. So I'm just going to define some properties for these. Okay, so I know that the lines that are being drawn on the screen are trend lines, so obj_trend. I'm just going to go back and get the names of them. So if I right click here and go to objects list, I can see that they are trend lines, and it's called SL space line and TP space line. So that's what I need. I'm just doing that because I like to have these kind of things defined once, and then if there is a change later, so if you get a new version of this indicator and these names change, you can easily update it here. So I'm making these two calls to a function called getLineValue. So let's write that function now. So these are the two arguments I'm passing in, the type and the name. First thing I want to do is make sure that that object exists. If object find can't find an object, it will return a value less than 0, and in that case the line doesn't exist. I'm just going to be returning a 0. At this point you might want to add some error handling. So if you get back a stop loss or take profit of 0, then when you place the trade it's not going to have any stop loss or take profit. So you might want to handle this, but just as I said earlier, I'm not handling errors. I'm just assuming that everything's going to work here. So here's my second test. I'm using object get integer, chart number 0, object name to get the type of the object. So it's unlikely that this will be a different type because you can't have two objects with the same name of different types. But just in case something goes wrong, and this is not a trend line, so if it doesn't match the type that's passed in, then I'm going to return a 0. Now I want to get the value for that line, which is effectively the price where that line has been placed. That's with the object get double, chart number 0, name of the object. I want the property objprop underscore price, and because it's a trend line, it can have two prices. It can have a beginning and an ending price. These are horizontal trend lines that they've used just to show the price. So just using price 0 will give me the beginning price, and it's the same all through. So price number 0 from that object. And then I can just return that value. So back in OpenTrade, I don't need to calculate take profit and stop loss here because they are already given by the lines, and I don't care which direction the trade's going. Those lines should still be correct. And I think everything else is the same. Let me just see if I can compile that, if I've made any mistakes. Oh, yes, I did. Down here in SignalValue, I need to change these arguments because this is a different indicator. And there you can see previously with the iCustom, I had only 3 arguments in here. Now I have 4. This will take as many arguments as you need, and any that are missing, as I said, will just come from the defaults for the indicator. I'm just using 4, but still buffer and bar. Let me try again. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and test this expert advisor. I'm not going to test it over a very long period because if this is like the indicator, it will be very slow to run. I have to test it in visual mode because I'm looking for those lines, the entry, stop loss, and take profit on screen. If I don't test this in visual mode, then they simply won't show up and I won't get values. So I need to test in visual mode. Euro, US dollar, period H1. I don't think anything else matters for the sake of demonstrating that this runs. I'll close up these earlier tests. My expert properties, I can see that I have the look back strength, the EMA trend, and the risk to reward ratio 1, 2, or 3. I'm just going to leave that at 1. And start. Well, this is actually running a little faster than the indicator did. But you can see there I've got two long entries. So the stop loss is down here and the entry point's there. If I look up, here's the take profit line. Here's my take profit. So I've taken one entry here on a long and another here. Once this signal appeared, then these lines have moved. So you can't see where they were for the earlier. I didn't stop this fast enough. But if I just stop it now, the lines disappear, but you can see the arrows have appeared. So I definitely took this at the point where the arrows occurred. And unlike version 1, the bug seems to have been fixed that I've taken the trade on the same candle where those arrows occur. So this all seems to be working. I've picked everything up and I'm making the trades. That is the expert advisor for Beast Super Signal version 4.3 from the Metatrader market. I'll also mention, because I'm getting this from the Metatrader market, you can't simply create this expert advisor and then pass it around. It simply won't work. The market protections will continue to work on this indicator, even though it's embedded in your expert advisor. But the techniques here are useful. Let me also do, just because things may change in the future, I am running this on Metatrader 4 version 4 build 1369 dated 17th of December 2022. So the only thing left then is to demonstrate converting this to Metatrader 5 also with this latest Beast Super Signal. almost there. There's not much more change for Metatrader 5. So I've opened the Metatrader 5 editor. I have downloaded the Beast Super Signal from the market, and I've also copied it into the indicators folder here under the Beast SS Expert already. The Metatrader 5 version comes with this MT5, so I've named this Beast Super Signal MT5, and I've added the V14.3, and you can see the extension here is .ex5. Here is the version 4.3 from MQ4, and I'm just going to save that as MQ5. So for Metatrader 5, there's not much to change up in the beginning here. I'm keeping all of this. The resource, even though the video that I referred to here is for Metatrader 4, this works for Metatrader 5. I do need to change this name, MT5, and it's EX5. Beast Super Signal MT5 V4.3 EX5. I haven't checked these, but I'm going to assume that the indicator for MT5 works the same way as the MT4. If it doesn't, then I'll go back and check later. I am going to be using the trade object to place the trades. So here I'm going to add an include. And I'm defining a variable called trade that is of type CTrade, which comes from this include file that comes with Metatrader 5. I also need a handle to the indicator because indicators work differently in Metatrader 5, so I need, and now I'll set these up in the OnInit. So firstly, trade.setExpertMagicNumber. The magic number is not passed in when trades are made using this CTrade object. They are set once at the beginning, or you can change them later if you like, but I only have a single magic number, so I'm just going to set that here once, trade.setExpertMagicNumber, and this magic number will be used every time I use this trade object to place a new trade. I also need to set up the indicator one time. This handle Beast SS is the handle to the indicator, and I'm assigning that in a function I'm going to write called SignalHandle. So let's go down and write that function now. I'm going to put it just above this signal value. And I'm creating a function for this because it's very similar to the signal value from MT4, but where in MT4 you call iCustom for each value you want to retrieve, in Metatrader 5 you just set up a handle once to that. So I'm actually going to just copy this statement that was left over from Metatrader 4. It's no longer a double, it's an int handle equals iCustom. Now the first three arguments are the same, the symbol, the period, and the indicator name. These arguments are still the arguments to the indicator, and again you can put in as many or as few as you like, but the buffer and bar don't exist because they are set when you retrieve values. So this will set up the indicator one time. I can just return the handle. The signal value function will also have to change, but we'll get to that as we move through the code. So now at this point I have assigned this handle Beast SS. Again, I'm not going to be bothering to check for errors, but you should check here to see if that's an invalid handle and then exit if it is. Also in Metatrader 5, because I've assigned this handle to the indicator, I need to release that when I finish to make sure the resources are freed up. The onTick function, I'm going to just make a small change to this. I probably could have made the same change in Metatrader 4. I'm only ever calling this to get a value for bar number 0, so I'm just going to remove that argument. But I still want the values for buffers 0 and 1. Again, I haven't checked this with the indicator. I'm going to trust that this works. If it doesn't, then I'll go back and check the indicator to see if these buffers are still valid. But all of that remains the same. I do need to make changes in the signal value and the OpenTrade functions. We'll start with OpenTrade because it comes first. And most of this code, all of this code down to this point where I'm simply setting the prices, will not change. But here I'm not using AutoSend, I'm going to be using the trade object. So I'm calling trade.positionOpen, and the arguments are the symbol, the type, the volume, price, there is no slippage value, stop loss, take profit, the trade comment, and as I said, the magic number is set on the object earlier, so I can remove that. Now I don't get a ticket number back from that. That simply returns a boolean, so I can say if not trade.position open, and in that case I will print these errors. And now to fix the signal value, I'm not going to be calling iCustom each time. I already have this handle. All I need to do is retrieve the values from that handle. I retrieve them into an array, so I'll declare my array as a dynamic array. I'll just get rid of these for the moment. And I don't need that int bar. I've removed that as an argument. So I'm passing in the buffer number, declaring an array of values, calling copy buffer using the global variable that is the handle to that indicator. I want that buffer number. I want to begin at value number 0 for a total of 1 values. So I'm really just getting a single value back, but it comes back into an array, and it comes back into this array values. So at the end of this statement, values will have 1 element in it. So all I need to do is return that. And I have a feeling that is everything. Let me just see if it compiles first. That worked. Let's go back and see if it runs. Metatrader 5. I'll set my expert. Beast SS Expert V14.3.ex5, Euro US, 1 hourly, again from the 14th of November to the 19th, which should be enough to show that it picks up a trade. Every tick, running in visual mode. Just pause it there. I can see that we have an entry signal, there's an arrow, there's the entry line. I can see I've taken the trade as close to that price as possible. Take profit line, stop loss line. This all seems to be working. I'm not going to let this run any further. It's just very, very slow. So that should be enough to show that at least the expert is trading when it receives these signals. So just to remind you, this is not about the Beast Super Signal indicator. This is more about the techniques of how you can identify where to get these signals from this type of indicator, the indicators that pop up the buy and sell arrows or some other symbol on screen, and where those symbols are based on an indicator buffer. So that was the Beast Super Signal indicator, and I also showed how you can run this against the version downloaded from the Metatrader market. But also remember, that version from the Metatrader market is protected, so you won't be able to simply download that and then simply move the expert around. You'll have to keep downloading it and recompiling on each machine where you want to run it. That's just one of the things to do with the protection. I can also only run this in the strategy tester because that's part of the protection on the demo version that I downloaded. If you want to run this on any kind of live or even just on a live chart on a demo account, you'll have to buy the indicator. Hope this has been useful to you. My next video is going to be the second follow-up from the previous video where I show how to do the same thing for the YMS indicator, which operates in a different way to the Beast Super Signal. So that's why I'm doing 2 of these videos, because there's a different technique involved. If you got some value from this video, please click the like button, and if you want to, subscribe, and then you'll see more of our videos in the future. So until next time, thank you for watching.